So, how do the planets actually have an impact on your human design? I'm Marianne. I'm from Human Design Alchemy, and I'm going to talk today about my subjects that I'm really deep diving into at the moment. So, I am a 1-3 self-projected projector, just to give you a little background there. All right, so let's dive in and see what it's all about. So what do the planets actually have to do with your human design? It's probably a good place to start. So when you come to human design, it is fairly common and probably recommended to start by working out your type and your strategy, followed by what your profile is and your authority. And from there, there's a definite pull that you'll probably feel to trying to discover all about the channels and your gates, or the centers, or whatever seems to stand out to you. And all of that is a fairly natural process. Some people do it in a slightly different way. Doesn't matter. Somewhere along the line, you may also decide to get a human design reading, which, in my opinion, is a good idea. This is not only from my perspective as a human design reader, but also from someone who, decided after a little while to get one for myself. So, a reading is a very useful thing to do. Quite often we ignore or don't fully understand what the planets are about. So when you look at your body graph, you'll notice that you've got 2 vertical lines of glyphs. One of them's red and one of them is black. Now, each of these are showing the planets, and they show each of your gates that are then coloured in your body graph. So they can all be found in that list of things. And they are actually quite important. So imagine the planets as being a little bit like maybe chicken and salt that you might add to your fries. Without that extra bit of flavour, they don't have the full excitement coming through. So the planets are actually there to provide us with extra information. They provide extra information essentially about how the gates are going to appear in your life and how you can actually work with those gates to make some changes in your life as well, I would say. So the planets have different themes and perspectives. I'm going to dive into that a little bit later. So, you can kind of explore questions like, how might your human design have an impact on your relationships? And you can look at certain gates in certain planets to get an idea of that. You might say, how can they have an impact on my finances or my business, me as a business owner maybe? How does it have an impact on the things that I'm interested in doing? All sorts of things. Like there's so many different things. They could influence your communication. They could influence your, intuitive abilities, all sorts of things. So, and then just to make it interesting, we can also actually have a look at other astronomical bodies that are out there in the solar system, essentially. So asteroids and so on. So some of the minor planets, all of that kind of thing. Now, obviously, the red and the black parts of your chart represent 2 points in time. So the black represents what was happening in the solar system at the time of your birth. This is why we need the exact time of your birth so that we can see exactly where things were. It needs to be quite precise. And then the red is about what was happening about 88 days prior to your birth. So the planets are a big part of that. They're a fairly big energy in our solar system. Remembering that planets, in terms of what we're talking about, also includes the sun and the moon. But, the other thing is that within those positions of the planets, there might also be asteroids and other astronomical bodies that are also there. Now, these aren't put on your chart because that would make your chart massive and quite complicated and when you looked at it, you would feel even more confused, possibly than you did when you first saw your chart to begin with. But you can have a look at them as a way to understand yourself more deeply. So it can help to guide how to look at the gates through the planets, through the activations of the, I'm just going to call them asteroids for ease. So it can all play together. And essentially, this is about you being able to use human design as your life roadmap, as your tool to help guide you into becoming the most beautiful, unique being that you're here to be. So, basically you can look at these different elements and you can see, where specifically conditioning might have happened. It can be looking at where the energy of others has actually led you away from who you truly are, so that you hold mistaken beliefs about yourself. It can actually show areas where there's been, what we'd probably call trauma now. So some kind of deep emotional impact. So it can be really interesting to go into this aspect. It can tell you a lot. All right, I'm going to go in a little bit deeper. This is not as deep as I could go. Remember, line 1. But I just want to go a little bit deeper into it so you can kind of see some potential. So the first question I'm going to explore a little bit more is, why do we, or what do we actually mean by saying that, each planet brings its own themes and energy to your chart? So let's kind of go backwards a little bit. Now, each of the planets were named after gods and goddesses from mythology. And the gods and goddesses of mythology are essentially like beings with a particular archetypal energy. So, essentially, if you look at a whole range of different mythologies around the world, you'll find that each of them includes particular archetypes that represent, can't say that, that represent, the things that the gods rule over, even how the gods went about living their lives, showing up in the world, all of that kind of thing. Some really interesting stories about some of these gods. Now, that's your archetypal kind of energy. And that comes through then and has an impact on your gates. So understanding this mythology can actually help you to understand more about the planets, and then to be able to see at a deeper level how they might be impacting you. So, it can be quite easy to look at someone else's brief summary of what the planets are all about and take that on board, and that's okay. No judgment. Sometimes that's the easiest thing to do, but can I say, if you are a line 1, you may want to go deeper. If you have some parts in your chart that are about stories and storytelling, you might like to go deeper. All right, it is quite interesting. Let me give you a little bit of an example of what I mean by a more basic perspective and what you can discover if you actually go deeper. So the example I'm going to give you is the planet Mercury, or the god Mercury. So whether this is in astrology or in human design, Mercury is spoken about as being about communication. So how we communicate, where we might have blocks around communication, our style of communication, all of those sorts of things. So it's certainly true that Mercury did have a role as a messenger. But if we dig a little bit deeper, so Mercury is from Roman mythology, which essentially, stole, for want of a better word, from Greek mythology. So if we look at Greek mythology, the equivalent to Mercury is called Hermes. Now, he had a huge amount of energy around being this special deliverer of messages between gods and from gods to humans and all sorts of things like that. So Mercury has some of that archetypal energy. But if we dig a little bit deeper, for the Romans, Mercury was also about being a god of things like merchants and businesses, and particularly to do with, the financial success. So there's a bit of financing and money and things that you can actually take if you're a business owner, some lessons you can learn, because of this aspect of Mercury. So communication is important, but there's other stuff as well. That's only a very short example, but it can be useful to explore if you are drawn to do that. All right, so let's take another question. So how can the planets actually help us in our lives? As I've said, that's, one of the things that they can contribute to your human design, to that, really unique blueprint. So it can be really interesting to actually look at the combination or how the planets and gates combine together. And you can often see areas where, there's kind of some shadow stuff happening that you haven't been aware of. And there may also be some, repeating patterns in your life that relate to the planet combined with the gate. Now, in a little bit of a, not quite so specific example, I'm going to talk a little bit about Saturn. So Saturn, amongst other things, plays a role in helping you to push out into the world rather than staying stuck. So essentially, Saturn can assist you with change if you choose to accept that help. So Saturn is a bit of a tricky energy, I'll be honest. And maybe I'll do some videos diving into the planets a little bit more deeply. But think about it as, a way to get you unstuck. The way it teaches you the lesson can be quite confronting, let's be honest here. So knowing which gate your Saturn is, or gates, because you've got the two sides. So sometimes you'll have the same gate in some of the planets, and sometimes you'll have different gates. So most likely in Saturn, you'll have two different gates, but not always. So know what gates are in Saturn, and, kind of go, well, is there something happening here that's combining this energy of Saturn with the gate itself to try and help me move forward, to actually help me to transform, is essentially what this is about. Now, we do always have a choice in any of these situations. We can, number one, ignore the thing entirely. We can kind of explore it a little bit, but what will sometimes happen, particularly with Saturn energy, it can actually bring fears up that you're totally unaware of. And sometimes the fears actually take over and you decide to just kind of stick with, the dagger in your back that sometimes Saturn can feel like it's often this pain point that's there to push you forward. So I think of it being a bit like a dagger going in. So you can choose to kind of keep living with that, or, you can choose not to. If you choose to not do anything about it, then you're going to find that, similar things will continue to happen. There'll be similar pain points that will come up, encouraging you to move forward. So there's always a choice on that. But hopefully at some point, the discomfort will reach the point where it will create the forward momentum in your life. So, looking at the planet Saturn and the gate or gates it's in can actually help to reveal to us, what we sometimes just stubbornly choose to ignore, or we may unconsciously choose to ignore. Remembering that, the red side is innate or unconscious. It's there, but it needs to rise within our consciousness for us to actually truly see what's going on. So we can, have these situations where we might be stubbornly refusing to look at something, or it may be that things need to keep coming up and reach a pinnacle point of pain before we actually do something about it. So the idea, though, is that when things come into our awareness, so whenever that is, it then gives us, the way forward, so we can actually find the way forward. I'm going to say, with that, asteroids are brilliant. So let's talk about the asteroids a little bit, because I love them, particularly when I combine with the planets and the gates. It's amazing and magical. So the question is, what do we do with the asteroids and those other objects that are out in our solar system, floating around, doing stuff, having a little bit of an energetic impact? So, the planets do contribute a lot of depth to understanding our design. They really can create a lot more clarity and a lot more specificity, I would say. So this is possibly the point at which you can start to differentiate even more from others, remembering that your human design and how that plays out in your life creates your dynamic uniqueness. All right. So basically, they're giving you a whole lot of stuff, some really powerful stuff about who you are. But sometimes, even when we come to see the planet, how it's working in the gates, there may be sort of some stuckness still there. This is where you can actually look at, the asteroids, remembering I'm calling everything out there asteroids at this point. So it can be quite an interesting exercise. So, for example, looking at your personality or your conscious sun gate, which is essentially the gate that gives you the information about how you are intended to show up in a very conscious way in the world. So what's the energy, the big energy that you're here to bring out and shine into the world? What happens if that's not actually shining? We know that gate is in the sun. The sun is the big energy in our solar system. So it's where we are capable of bringing some real magic into the world in whatever fits with the overall rest of our chart, essentially. So let me give you a little bit of a dig in. This is probably not entirely where I came to the asteroids from. That's another long story. But I think looking at it through the lens of my personality sun gate really gave me that first understanding of how I could use the asteroids and how that could actually drive me forward. So my personality sun gate is in gate 47. So this is the gate of realization. It's in the ajna. It's connected to gate 64 in the head. Now, this gate is all about your mindset and your ability to see new possibilities within old problems. And, that in itself, realizing that's what I'm here to shine for, was a bit of a revelation. It wasn't, when I thought about it, it wasn't outside of my reality, but, I'd kind of been conditioned to see myself in a different way. Once I started to embrace that, I then had people, seeking me out for the unique way that I can see their old problems and help them to solve them. All right. So basically this gate really is about being able to bring about powerful transformations in others and in their situation in life, essentially. So I worked through, the general conditioning around this gate. I worked through, my blocks around shining out in the world, all of those kinds of things. But there still seemed to be a little bit of stuckness still happening there. So I, at this time, was starting to learn about the asteroids and, other more multidimensional aspects of our human design. And I discovered that I had the asteroids Persephone and Hecate in this gate. Now, they're both quite powerful archetypal feminine energies in different kinds of ways. I won't go into that too much, but essentially by looking at what Persephone and what Hecate were about, I had this whole new way of looking at, gate 47 in my sun, personality sun. Why was I not shining brightly? Why wasn't I able to bring through always this special magic of gate 47? So there was a lot that I needed to work through, and I am still working through with Persephone and Hecate. But, it's been a point at which I've been able to create the next level of transformation in my life. It's actually been quite a revelatory process that I'm now using with other people that I work with. So always remember, and I think this is where I want to finish, always remember that your human design is your personal blueprint. It's not meant to be a picture that's stuck up on the wall and, is like an added extra to your home or whatever. All right. It's meant to be the roadmap that you take out every day and you have a look at and you play around with and you get to understand more and more. It is meant to be a tool that can lead you into change. It can lead you into seeing how truly unique and remarkable you are. This is not to say, as I've hopefully gotten through to you, that it's easy. It's not. If you really, in fact, general statement, if you really want to embrace your human design, and I would recommend that, it is not meant to be a short, sharp, once dive in and out and done process. It is a life journey. No matter at what point in time you discover your human design, it then takes you on a new and different journey through your life. It will give you, trials. It will give you things that you have to confront if you're choosing to take that journey. But it also brings you transformation and empowerment in a very specific way just for you. So it's not generalized. It's for you. It's about you. All right. You need to be willing to do the work, but it is amazing. So remember, human design, use it as your blueprint. Use it as your map that you check in with every single day. Okay, I think I am done for this particular episode. Please let me know, just out of interest, where is your personality sun gate? And do you feel like you're actually shining out in the world through that gate? Something to think about. All right, let me leave it there. So bye for now. Oops, if I can turn this off. Let's try again. Okay, bye for now.